Bill Valero, will you please come down and introduce Tom? And we're all excited for the scary AI presentation.
In the interest of time, I'm not going to give any further biography on Tom, but rather an introduction to his talk. So please pay attention. Um, Back in February of 2017, Tom had the opportunity to attend several meetings at the London offices of Google DeepMind, which was their relatively under the radar artificial intelligence division. To be very honest, apparently there was a lot of busy looking people running around, but not much to show for their effort. But by October of 2017, DeepMind announced that its groundbreaking so-called AlphaGo Zero AI model had learned the game of, quote, Go, unquote, purely through self-play, starting from scratch with no human data or guidance beyond the basic rules of the game. In just 40 days, it became superior to all previous versions of AlphaGo and arguably the strongest Go player in its history. For those not familiar with the game, apparently Go is a two-player board game where players place stones to surround territory with complexity arising from an enormous number of possible board positions. So a challenging game. This was 2017, before DeepMind founder Demis Hassabis had won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his foundational work in using AI to predict the structures of proteins. Nor had his colleague Geoffrey Hinton won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics for his foundational discoveries that enable machine learning with artificial neural networks. That was 2017. Now fast forward to 2025, and we now find the development and deployment of artificial intelligence as a significant engine of the US economy, with some estimating that in 2026, US firms will spend $86 billion on data centers alone, and that globally, AI will top $2 trillion. The ultimate real-world effect of all this investment is difficult to predict, but it'll touch every corner of the US economy, including the administration of justice in our own courthouse. Today, Tom will discuss AI and the law in the context of a paper he's writing that examines artificial intelligence and how it affects pre-law and law students. First, he'll discuss the fundamental principles of AI using the terms we see every day in the business section of the newspaper. Then we'll look at how AI technology will impact the core business of our courthouse. So to continue this, I give you Tom Jevons.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. So I'm going to try to get through this quickly, but I encourage people to ask questions. I get a sense that there's some concern about AI, but I think some. I hope you all can learn something from this about artificial intelligence as well as how it's going to work in the courthouse. And so I want to just kind of start that way. I start with my opening slide of C3PO or C3PO chasing lawyers out of the courthouse, because I don't believe that's going to be the case. I mean, I am a supporter of artificial intelligence, but I am not a blind zealot supporting artificial intelligence. I believe it has a place and it will be significant, but it's also potentially dangerous. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So by way of intro, we'll talk about artificial intelligence. some of its key concepts, also talk about just quickly about some of its yeah, social impacts, and then AI in the courthouse. So what is AI? Does anybody want to throw out an answer? What you think AI is? I am just dying to move around here. Where's that mobile mic? Can I grab that? Yeah, anyway, anybody want to have a thought? What do you think? I'm happy to, I'd love to hear kind of where everybody's at. Is everybody pretty comfortable with it? Who's comfortable with artificial intelligence? A couple of hands, awesome. And folks that are not so comfortable, a couple, okay, a little bit of every. Has anybody, the folks who have not, are not comfortable, anybody, have you used AI particularly very much? Lori. Well, Lori doesn't use it, but she watched iRobot. Well, for the folks who do not who are not comfortable with AI, I regret to inform you that you use AI every single day. If you use Google search, you use AI. If you use, and I'm a ex-Google employee, so bear with me. If you use search, you use AI. If you use Waze or Google Maps, you use AI every single day. Do you have a question?
You can also use it to write wonderful limericks for birthday cards, which I did for Rodney.
You can use it for haiku too, which I don't even not sure what it means, but for haiku, yeah.
The variety of answers to the same question is infinite. So don't give up on the first try.
Excellent advice. So you have used AI. You've seen a lot of it. A lot of it's out there. We're going to talk about it right now. Oops, wrong direction. Here's a couple, kind of a description of it that'll kind of kick off the top. I mentioned Jeffrey Hinton. He is notable for a couple of reasons. One, because he won a Nobel Prize for his foundational work in AI. Basically describing in very simple terms here what AI really is. It's machines thinking like our human brain thinks. And he is notable because he quit Google and is now very much a spokesperson for his concerns around the future of artificial intelligence and different types of AI, which we'll talk about. So, but in the end, I think his characterization is excellent in that it is very simply how our brains work. So I'm going to break down some of those terms of how AI works for you. Neural networks, training models, LLMs. You've probably heard all these terms in the news, and even the concept of hallucinations you've heard of in the legal context. You may have noticed articles about lawyers getting in trouble for using artificial intelligence, preparing briefs, turning them into the courts, and then finding out that the AI was citing non-existent authorities. So yeah, that's I know I see Thomas and Lori. I know if Bill was online too, he would be squirming, but that's not a good thing. So let's talk a little bit about all these different elements. So what Hinton basically talks about when he talks about neural networks, the defined term, neural networks, that concept is a neural network is just how your brain thinks. And it is basically, you do it in a fraction of a second when you think about something. You process it from a higher level down to a lower level, and ultimately conceive of what you're looking at or what you're seeing or what you're saying. What do I mean by that? I think the classic example is you observe a cat, and your brain observes the cat at the input level, and through its different layers of the way your brain is structured, it says, well, that's a male cat, or that's a female cat, or that's a Siamese cat, or that's an orange cat, or that's a one-legged cat, or whatever it is. It ultimately sorts it down so that your brain identifies what kind of cat that is. That's when Jeffrey Hinton talks about neural networks, that's what he's talking about. When you hear that concept, that's not complicated. It's just the way your brain works. You know this intuitively. I just threw up this graphic here too, similar to the way the courthouse works. You've got lawyers, you've got precedents, you've got judges, you've got administrative staff. A legal matter comes up through the courthouse, works its way through the process, and there's the judge up at the up in the observation tower making a final judgment. That's the same thing. It like a pachinko machine. It works its way through your brain. It works its way through the courthouse. That is all that a neural network is. That's a foundational concept. The next thing is training data. And you're going to hear that term all the time. What does training data mean? Well, artificial intelligence is trained on all of the data. Well, let's put it this way: it's trained on data. Some of the bigger data models, like or models like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, some of those ones you've probably heard of, are trained on a phenomenal amount of data. Basically, those big general models are trained on the internet. Okay, the way they think processes information from the highest level through its neural networks down to the basics, um, using training data, which can be as much as everything, or in this simple example, uh, you know, sorting out different types of animals. You know, they're up here. There are pictures of you would train the model with birds, cats. I think there's a dog in there somewhere, um, and then it thinks it's through its neural network and creates an output. It learns. Well, that's an output. That's a cat. This is other output. Well, that's not a cat. That's how they learn. That's how networks learn using training data to train themselves. Okay. And by the way, um, the concept of things like ChatGPT, where you enter information, you type in your question, and out comes a response, out comes a limerick, for example. Um, those are trained on a lot of different types of data. They're also trained on images. They're also trained with video. They're also trained with all sorts of different media. So I mentioned that because all the graphics that I've done today, all this stuff is not something that I found on the internet and adapted to my presentation. I made queries into a variety of different different chatbots, various like ChatGPT and so forth. And I created these images. The machine created these images, and I adapted them to this presentation. So none of this is all original Tom artwork, so you can tell it's basic and kind of silly, but it's all original stuff that I used AI to create. So that's the kind of output that you can get. So what does it mean? How does it all tie together? You've got your neural network, you train it, but you have to have it be able to produce information, produce a response, either text or images or video. You can do now all sorts of things. And at its most basic level, you hear the concept of large language models. That idea. I mean, there are many different types of AI, but that's the most prevalent one, and that you'll hear out in the media. There are many types of large language models, but in the end, what that means is it's taken the input, running it through its network, based on its training, producing a result. And you can have different types of that, a very general model, like if you go to ChatGPT right now, or there's domain-specific models that receive extra training. And here's the key concept. The key concept that you have to remember whenever you're using artificial intelligence. It only knows what it's been trained on. The large language model only knows what it's been trained on, okay? There is a whole lot of data out here in the world that it is not available to the ChatGPT and Google to train their models on. For example, you can access entire databases of every court decision that's been made in the United States. That can be accessed and so forth. But a law firm has its own internal proprietary memos and interpretation of that law. That's not going to be available out on the internet. That's behind a firewall. That's protected. The internet and therefore the artificial intelligence applications will never don't get to see that. However, you can also create systems in artificial intelligence that allow you to get the general stuff, but also train it on your own proprietary internal information as well. So you'll hear about, there's a program Google has called Notebook LM, excuse me, and Notebook LM allows you to input all your personal private data, not submit it. It's not out in the world when you do that. It's just internally like a database, and then you can search your own material. So for example, we could dump all of our minutes into into a database like that and then search it with AI, but you couldn't do that on a general database. So some of the things that form the way artificial intelligence think, there's always the issue of context. And to make a long story short, this is a great example of a contextual situation that artificial intelligence might not understand. So this is what makes these databases and applications hard to program. Because you can have a rock and roll. You can have a rock, or the young lady there rocking back and forth. Artificial intelligence has to be trained and be able to understand the context of the information that it receives. Okay, that makes sense. It can't. It cannot. If you say, chatbot, show me a rock, it's been trained now to be able to say, well, either what kind of rock or here's the different types of rocks. But this context, it does not know intuitively. This has to be learned through training, and you hear about that a lot in the media around artificial intelligence, because you hear a lot about bias and how databases are trained, how the artificial intelligence is trained. Similarly, that does lead to the conversation about bias, and that's a big issue. And you hear a lot about that if you dive into this field. Bias just in the context of AI just simply means that if you train an artificial intelligence with a limited amount of data, so in this case, there's a history book from a very thin shelf of history books. She is reading some history, but that might not be the whole package. So when databases, or excuse me, when AIs are trained, the depth of the knowledge and then therefore the depth of the information that it can share back to you has to be very broad. And you've heard about this complaints about certain models being, I'm going to be quote unquote a little bit more liberal, as opposed to a more conservatively trained models like the one that Elon Musk has, Grok. That could be interpreted as bias, but that is another issue in artificial intelligence that you hear a lot about. And last but not least, hallucinations. And I say, before I talk about that, this typo, I redid this question, the query to form this slide about 10 times, making it crystal clear that I wanted to spell hallucination correctly, and it gave me the wrong name every time. It misspelled it wrong. I couldn't figure out how to get it to spell it correctly. So you know what? I'll just leave it in there. It's not a hallucination. It's just a glitch or something in the AI that I used. And it comes up again. I have another slide where I just couldn't get it fixed. But what hallucinations are, I touched on that earlier. When you are entering information and querying a artificial intelligence, it can give you back an answer that is just basically wrong. And I have asked the lawyers the rule against perpetuities. I asked it to define the rule against perpetuities for me, which is a fairly nuanced legal concept, and it flat out gave me the wrong answer. That was a few years back. AI can hallucinate. It wants to give you an answer. And what these different pictures show are different types of hallucinations. It can invent facts. It wants to give you an answer. And if it can't satisfactorily find an answer for you, it'll invent something, or it'll see something that's not there, or it'll just fabricate details. And that's exactly what happened in the example that I shared about lawyers who use AI, and the AI cites cases to them that don't exist. So bottom line, putting it all together, tying it all together, AIs are just machines. They're software and a considerable amount of hardware that just thinks like us, uses a neural network just like our brains. It's trained just like we were educated. It has a large language model. It responds to the way that they are taught to respond, just like we grow up and learn to respond the way we do. And they require bias, or excuse me, they require context. They can have biases, and they can also flat out hallucinate, lie, and even in some cases, there are reports of artificial intelligence trying to kind of protect itself if it begins to think that there is something out there or someone out there threatening it. Maybe we're going to turn it off. They've had documented cases where AI has purposefully misled its programmers to keep it from being. I should have given you a citation for this, but purposefully lying. Bottom line. So So what types of AI are there? A couple different types, and I'll just go through these really quickly because you're going to hear about this. You're going to hear about this now. If you read the business section, you're going to hear about this considerably in the future. So the first thing is what the concept of machine learning. Machine learning is what is the question that I posed to you when we first started. Google's search engines, that's machine learning. The maps, that's machine learning. Spam filters, in this example, that is all the types of things that the machine that you are using has sorted itself out and said, Steve doesn't want to receive this spam, so I'm going to just put it into my spam filter. And it learns from what you consider spam or don't consider spam. That's AI, and we've been using that for years. The next one is ChatGPT and basically large language models, the type of commercially generally available AI that you see today. Same exact concept. It learns from the internet. It learns all the information. And then all it's doing in generative AI is just predicting the next word. That's the concept, just like our brains work. And then it allows you essentially to have a conversation with it. You are querying it with questions and it gives you a response. That is the AI that you have today. It's available on your phones and on your computers right now. Just very simply being able to query not just your own brain, but essentially the up to and including the world's knowledge in the internet. And by a process of prediction, gives you back an answer that in some circumstances, I'm just dumbfounded by the detail of the answers that I get. Got a question here from Sue. Work my way over here.
What surprised me is that it just showed up on my computer. It just shows up. It's not something that you say, yes, I want you to be a system on my computer. It never told me it was going to be there. It was just there. Okay. And that makes it very suspicious.
I think I know what you're talking about. So what Sue, are you referring to the AI answers that you see when you do Google? In chat, you've just got a chat bot on your computer? Oh. Well, might want to look at that actually, because it shouldn't just show up. You have noticed perhaps in Google search these days that you get an AI compilation of the response to your query, and then it gives you all the nice all the Google employees love all the links that you can click on and we get paid for down below. But yeah, well that's interesting. So I don't know, I can't quite explain how something showed up on your computer. We can talk about that.
As long as you're on the subject of getting AI, so what is the business model like? Are people paying for a streaming service, or do you buy software, or do you pay by the time you use it? When people are creating these science fiction movies on YouTube or something, somebody obviously has to pay for that. But how is that done?
Sure. So the question is how essentially how is artificial intelligence being monetized these days? A lot of different ways. There, you can use ChatGPT, for example. They've got a basic entry-level service where you get 2 or 3 queries, then they'll cut you off. Or you could buy the more advanced, I think it's like $20 or $30 a month service that you can pay for its more advanced databases. Google is monetizing it through search by basically characterizing the AI, the more detailed answers you get, but pointing you and citing you back into the links that it wants you to click on, and that's how Google makes its money. I'm going to talk also about a number of other businesses. It's a great question. That also have monetized AI in the context of the law, but I'll talk about that in just a minute. Got Mary.
This may not be a fair question, but in 2001, we had the internet bubble. The stock market had gone way, way up. In 2008, we had the finance bubble. When is the AI? Are we in the AI bubble, and when is it going to happen?
If I could answer the question of when the AI bubble would burst, I would be on my G5 Jetstream jet and not talking to you guys. But I would be enjoying my house in Capri, which is a lovely place. No, that's a great question. I mean, I literally read about this every day because I do kind of dive into AI almost every day for the paper I'm working on. Are we in a bubble? I mean, I literally saw an expert yesterday that said he believed we were the market is in an AI bubble. It is not the same type of market conditions that caused the big crash in 2000, which I had a front row seat with, working up in Silicon Valley at that time. But he said it's similar. But then what he turned around and said is, well, maybe it's going to be a couple more years before anything happens and that in a quote unquote bursts, because the big players are just investing tens of billions of dollars yearly in this, and it's going to continue to drive chip sales and data center growth and power consumption, all those things. So is it going to burst now? This expert, he's a billionaire, one of those random billionaires, didn't think it was going to happen right away. But if you're concerned with that, there's a lot of information about it. And I had a conversation with my financial advisor a long time ago saying, yeah, kind of, how do you guys deal with this? And that I'm not giving financial advice, but I would talk to mine as well if I were you. That's a great question, Mary. Thank you. The next type of artificial intelligence that you're going to hear about is artificial general intelligence. That's the immediate goal that the big producers of artificial intelligence are shooting for. Artificial general intelligence was described very simply by Mark Schmidt, who is a former chairman of Google. He basically said that when that is available, when the systems are finally able, the artificial intelligence is finally able to not just respond to questions, but respond to questions and provide solutions, new and novel thinking. When that point comes along, that doesn't mean they're conscious. It just means that it is able to generate thinking beyond like a human ultimately does. They feel is not that far away. I mean, and that level of intelligence will be like a very, very intelligent person who you can basically query and get thoughtful information from. And that's what this is going on here. The next level is, in my opinion, I'm going to be real straight with you. I think it's the more scary level. Schmidt described artificial superintelligence as a level that's several years out, but not one super smart individual at your service, but the thinking power of a billion super smart people at your service to answer questions and answer queries. And what that means is that they will be able to answer the types of questions which are conceivably so far beyond human understanding that they will advance us considerably quicker. But it also poses the greatest risk, and that's the kind of risk when I mentioned earlier that Jeffrey Hinton is talking about. That's what we're talking about here. He's not so worried about the current levels. It's the future. And I don't mean to scare people, but learning at light speed, solving impossible problems and advancing humanity, that's a positive take on it, but one that I encourage everybody to understand and think about and look for when the media starts to talk about it, because that's a significant development. The other thing you're going to hear about all the time, I promise you, if you haven't heard about it yet, is agentic artificial intelligence. The AI manufacturers these days are putting together systems that can, if given your authorization, can put together responses based on your direction that would require you to go through multiple steps that you might not necessarily want to do, but you can turn the AI loose on it to solve those problems for you. What's an example? An example of agentic AI would be going to your computer, programming it, asking, I want to take a vacation. I want to fly 2 weeks. I want to fly from here to here to here. I want to see this, and this. I want to buy tickets to these places. I want to have my entire vacation put together for me. Get back to me, AI, when it's ready. And agentic AI will be able to conceivably do that. It's not real successful right now. It is being deployed in some ways, but it has not been broadly deployed. So that when it comes back to you and says, I want to go to Spain, I want to go to England, I want to fly back home, it'll come back to you and say, okay, I can pull the trigger on that. Are you ready to go? And if you say yes, it'll buy your ticket, it'll buy the ticket to your show in London, it'll do whatever, and just come back to you and say, oop, boop, there you go. I got a question in the back here from other Mary.
I haven't used ChatGPT to buy tickets, but I've used ChatGPT to plan a trip already. I mean, you have to check. The problem is because of hallucinations, you have to check everything. And if it tells you to take a train from there to there, you have to then go on and make sure that the train actually goes from there to there. But yeah, but that. So this is different because it will.
That's the same concept, except sorry, it's the same exact concept of what you're looking for now, except you would expect it to do all that checking and make sure it's 100% accurate and produce for you, and it'll pay for everything. You know, that's the huge difference. As some of you folks know, I just took a trip down the Mississippi River, and I planned the whole thing doing AI, and it was fantastic. So what are some of the real world implications? Oh, we got plenty of time. I can just go on and on. No, the real world implications of all this, I'm just going to touch on some of these. I mean, these are just scraping the surface of some of the issues that are out there that you need to be aware of. Job transformation and economic inequality. I mean, there are some reports. I read a report in preparing my piece for the law students that said that there will be a 43% reduction in entry-level law jobs within the next 3 years in law firms. 43%. If you are an undergrad, or if you are a law student thinking about going to law school and you read that, your job market's potentially going to be reduced by that much. You better pay attention. And that's going to create all sorts of economic inequality. You know, countries that have the availability to use this kind of power versus countries that don't are going to also create global inequality potentially. I mean, we could just talk about the different permutations of this around and around. It has the potential to significantly disrupt the way people work and the way people interact. Ethical bias and discrimination, same issue. We talked about bias. I mean, we all have biases. It's inherent, and it's inherent in the way we interact with the world. So there's inherent bias in AI. It's almost unavoidable, and the discrimination that can come from that. And that's something that they're trying to deal with. But that's a huge issue. Energy consumption. My daughter works back in DC, and I contact her, and I send her something great about AI and whatever it might be. Something, honey, use this for your job. This will make you more successful. And she'll send me back, Dad, this is all great, but isn't this going to cost a lot of energy, or isn't this going to what's the cost of all this? And that's a great question. She's thoughtful. And I read and I re-verified this fact this morning because it just seems so. I don't know, just incredible to conceive of the fact that 12% of U.S. energy might be consumed by artificial intelligence in like the next 3 years. I mean, that really tells you something about where this is going. This train's running. It's not going to stop until it is ultimately monetized or failed. This is, and it is, to Mary's very thoughtful question, a little bit different from the .com bust in that respect. I mean, I lived through that when that was, people invested in companies that had no sales, no products, and huge valuations. I mean, the guys that are building AI now, Microsoft, Google, Oracle, are massive multinational corporations. This is heading down a path that's going to happen one way or the other. And then last but not least, the potential for deep fakes. And if you heard that concept, deep fakes or misinformation, be so aware and cognizant of the fact that these things can create videos that make people look like they're saying stuff. You've all seen it. The president saying things that he never said, or opposition leaders saying things they never said to get political. I watched a video the other day that popped up on my screen. It was of crazy scenarios where like animals, like a bear was like creeping up on a little baby, and they were so realistic. I said, this is crazy. This didn't happen. And indeed, it was just made up, but it was done so effectively. I was blown away. So a huge admonition to everybody in here, and I'm happy to chat with you about it, but watching out for that kind of stuff is critical. So, gosh, Tom, that was all great, but what about the courthouse? We finally get around to it. Yeah, absolutely. But we got a lot of time. We're good. I talk a little bit about court structures, judges, and judicial staff. I'll talk about some of the programs that are out there affecting the practice of law now, and I'll expect Thomas and Lori to challenge me on some of this stuff. And then job loss or career enhancement. What is it going to mean for people who's make their careers practicing law? This is just a little bit of background information about the way that the courts in Santa Barbara County are constructed. And I mentioned earlier, I think maybe to George or somebody, that I did contact the courts here to get some information from one of their people. And apparently my email bounced around inside the administration for quite a while. And just this morning, I got a phone call from a representative of the courts who wanted to talk to me about my questions, because I think my questions were pretty insightful. I wanted to share some of those thoughts with you guys. And I don't think they wanted to commit it to paper, to be very honest with you. But I'm going to talk to them, and I'll share with you what I talked when I talk with this person. But anyway, so we got 21 judges, state court judges, doing their good works here in the county, and over 200 staff, attorneys, paralegals, interpreters, clerks, all that good stuff that support their work, using clerks like you hear about Supreme Court clerks and kind of the low-paid labor of appellate courts and so forth. They don't use that as much at the state court level. So it's professional staff that are out there doing this work, research, drafting, helping the judges prepare. And those who practiced are more in the courts are more familiar with this than I am. But stuff like transcripts, language interpretation, all that. I just took a couple examples of how artificial intelligence, generative AI in the first case, and automated document processing in the second case, are going to affect the way courts do their business. Generative AI, there are programs out there right now. Lexis and Westlaw are search programs. You can find all kinds of information. And this one called Harvey is another type of artificial intelligence specifically designed for law. And basically what these kind of programs can do, help you with your research, but also help you with your writing. So for example, I think you have a general sense an attorney will need to prepare a briefing document or a pleading for a judge, and they will want to have a well-argued case, of course. They can now go, instead of pounding through all the case law and trying to find all the cases and all the controlling precedent and statutes and so forth, they can feed that all into an artificial intelligence system like Harvey and produce a very complete memo in about 3 minutes, which would have taken them potentially days to do. Now, should they just turn that into the judge, or should the judge just use that? No, you need to look at it and make sure it's correct. But programs like Harvey and Lexis and Westlaw will allow the courts to be that much more quick and that much more thoughtful, that much more detailed in the work that they do. And that's going to be huge for the courthouse. I mean, is that going to cause disruption in the number of folks working there? I'll get to that. But I mean, it's huge. It's automating research, big deal. And the same thing with automated document processing. You can now process. There's so much of the way the courts operate is processing pleadings, processing documents, processing all the legal maneuvering that goes on back and forth in any case. And there are a number I highlighted: open text, relativity AI, nuance, that incorporate optical character recognition. So the pleadings and stuff that may come in on paper or come in over the email can all be fed into these systems and processed now at a speed that would not require as many clerks or as much hands-on processing as they might normally. So as you can see, I mean, this is all behind the scenes. And we all know that technology has helped the courts evolve over the years. In 1929, they didn't have fax machines. They didn't have mobile phones. They didn't have computers. They didn't have a lot of the technology that they have now that has sped up the way the courts work. And what they're going to be expecting to see in the very near future is artificial intelligence technology that just basically puts the pedal to the metal on that. Current applications, a lot of the input work in Miami-Dade County down in Florida has this kind of processing work for their documents. And LA County, I looked at this pretty closely. They have a AI system that, I mean, LA County, how big is LA County? 4 or 5 million people, right? For their jury duty processing, it's an automated system based on artificial intelligence. That's pretty powerful to be able to automate as much as that, given the fact, I didn't even look out how many courts there are down in LA, but there are probably hundreds. So that it's actually in the world working right now. So here's the real question. I mean, this is the question that that I think the courts are thinking about. This is probably why the administrator didn't get right back to me. This is a question that honestly our children and our grandchildren are considering and thinking about. You know, again, from the perspective of the courthouse, our job's going to be lost to AI. I'm not going to say yes or no, but I mean, it's highly probable that certain types of responsibilities are going to evolve considerably based on what I've been sharing with you guys. But on the other hand, you know, this says judicial analyst AI powered case strategist, and there's another one of those pesky typos I couldn't get rid of. Think about how much more powerful an individual clerk or attorney can be with their ability to process pleadings or process motions and digest them and respond to them in ways that they couldn't before. So is it going to be taking away jobs? Maybe. Is it going to be enhancing jobs? I would submit to you absolutely. That's kind of the future of where we're going. And remember too, and this is kind of the area where I'm stepping off into a little bit more of a questionable zone, is what about AGI, right? What about artificial general intelligence? The ability for the machines to think and come to conclusions that we might not necessarily be aware of, or artificial superintelligence, which is like a billion super smart people. Will, you know, this is a rhetorical question. You know, are the court systems prepared to let a machine process data and come to the right conclusion because they are that much, you know, artificial superintelligence, that much more insightful, intelligent than we are, and provide that kind of answer. I mean, artificial superintelligence is theoretically going to make huge advancements in the sciences and so forth. You can count on that. But the way the laws is done as well may be facing a significant, real significant evolution here in the very near future. More than just, like I was saying, more than just getting fax machines and how that changed the courts, but artificial intelligence that may change the way the decisions are made. I leave that to you. I don't have an answer for that. I don't think there is any known answer for that. That's one for you to chew on as well. So what does the future hold? I think my view is that AI will be right next to the judge, side by side, with providing counsel and, you know, enhancing the ability of people to make decisions and court personnel to make decisions and administer judgment in our courthouse in a thoughtful and insightful way. Ray Kurzweil, you get your head around this. Ray Kurzweil is a futurist, and he projected back in 2014, 15, 16, and recently again a concept called, which you'll hear about, called the singularity. And the singularity is when artificial superintelligence, using interaction with our own brains, perhaps plugged into our own minds, to be able to search. He firmly believes that you'll have that kind of functionality in your head that will allow you to access the internet and think using the power of artificial superintelligence to make decisions. Now, is that happening tomorrow? Will it ever happen? I don't know. But that's where the science is going. And whether or not it gets there, I'm not going to say. But bottom line, I will conclude with saying that I think it's an exciting time for to be in this system, exciting time to be in the place where we all love and will enjoy working. It's going to be changing, and it won't happen on the surface when we're given our tours, but it'll be going on in the courtrooms that we cherish so much. Anybody have any questions? I think I got through that pretty quick. Yes, sir. In the back. Yes, Steve. Oh, okay, sure. Thank you. Forgive me.
So Tom, in preparing the slides, for example, that image that said, you know, about the hallucination, AI hallucination. So what does a query look like, and how long does it have to be, or how detailed is it? You know, does it go on for pages and pages, or just a few words and the computer fills in the rest?
That's a great question, and believe it or not, formulating queries is actually a major skill in these big tech companies now. They don't have to be long queries at all, but the more you shape the query the question that you pose to artificial intelligence, the better result that you tend to get. So for example, I literally was working on that. I'm involved with a group up at UCSB, and we're putting together a pitch deck to get out in front of groups in the community and tell them about our group, right? So the first thing I asked artificial intelligence was just literally a few hours ago was, tell me, show me give me an example, describe a very well formulated pitch deck that you might, that a small company might use presenting to venture capitalists to get them to finance them. So it gave me a really awesome paragraph based on my knowledge of that field. It's like, okay, that's fantastic. So then I took that and I queried against it and said, based on that, and I queried it against a database that I have compiled of information about this group I'm in, put together a slide presentation that meets the standard of that paragraph that I asked it to put together. And it literally, within a matter of seconds, put together a 11 slide presentation. It wasn't perfect. It's going to have to be edited, but literally put together an 11-page presentation, which nailed the concept of how you pitch your group to a group of people. It took me 20 minutes and would have taken days to do. Did that this morning. I got whoever you want to grab, Alan. We got a bunch of questions.
Going back to the specific programs, Lexus and Harvey,
Yes.
how safe are they from interference? Pardon my terminology or lack of.
How safe are they from like interference from outside parties or something?
Right.
Yeah.
Fake, creating false information, imagining cases.
Well, and that's great. Thank you, Maria. Perfect question. So it is less likely to have a problem with that, and I'll tell you why. Those, for the lawyers in the room, you understand Lexis and Westlaw are services that lawyers use that you can search databases of case law and authorities and so forth. Huge databases that lawyers use to do research for their casework. I used them all the time when I was in practice. That's a proprietary database. That's all curated and controlled by Lexis and Westlaw. So when they turn their search engines loose, they are turning it loose on data that they control and they entered. Not just, and some of it is case law. The case law is the case law, but some of it is interpretations of case law and so forth. And their databases are queried against that information. So it's less likely to be out thinking about and pulling in information that might be an hallucination, trying to make stuff up from the web. Now, is it perfect? Of course not, but it's less likely in a situation like that. Harvey, Westlaw, Nexus, Lexus. Go ahead, Alan. Who's next? Awesome. Chris too.
Things. My grandkids were playing with ChatGPT one day, and as most of you know, I do Scottish country dance, and so they managed to create a reel, a figure called Mimi's Reel that involved a handstand. Now, we don't do handstands in Scottish country dance, okay? But they then asked ChatGPT to come up with a Scottish country dance 32-bar reel for 3 couples and a 4-couple set that included Mimi's Reel. And sure enough, up it popped. So there's a potential there for it to learn the wrong stuff, never mind hallucinations. The question I had for you was apropos the legal stuff. Where does the jury fit into this?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, boy, that's a fantastic question. I think it runs the risk of the admonition the juries receive to not do their own research, or to only take in the information and the law and the information, the facts that they learn in the courtroom when they're making their considerations. It is a exponentially bigger risk, I think, than what they might already have if they sneak off and do their own research. No, she asked, will we still need juries? That's a fabulous question. If you are in the context of artificial superintelligence, could you put facts and law in front of a decision maker like that and have it come out with an answer? That's for society to decide. Could it do it? Will it be able to do it? Absolutely. I believe it absolutely could. You could feed the facts and details in. and it would say, this is what the judgment should be. Judge, jury, and execution are right there. Whether we elect to do it, I'm kind of skeptical. I don't think we'll ever do it. I don't think a perfect example I've tried to think through a few times is death penalty cases. I mean, is there any point where we would turn over the decision-making process in a death penalty case to anything other than human interaction? That's such an extreme example, but it's real. I would say no. So that's what society's going to have to grapple with, I think, in the future. It's a great question. I think
I know there's several questions coming.
I'm
down
yeah.
soon.
Chris next.
I just wanted to know when you're going to get to the part where it's not scary.
But I'm going to get to the part where it's not scary, Georgia. I'm afraid that ship has sailed.
Yeah, maybe this is a comment as much of a question, but you made it when you talked about the law thing. I think it's safe when you use curated data.
It's a good way to put it.
And there's a medical, I was just reading the other day about a medical company that they said a third of the doctors in the US are now using that they just feed it medical journals and nothing else.
No, that's feeding it medical journals, feeding it, and then a good friend of mine his son is a physician's assistant. He says he's using it in their analysis all the time, every day.
I don't want to pig out on comments, but I just after the show I'll show you a picture my brother sent of my family back 50 years ago, and it was a still picture that they turned into a video, and it looks so real.
That's all AI working together. Yeah, Chris. It's amazing.
Thank you. Good presentation.
Thank you.
I live in a community and I work in the library. And AI has been very useful as I was setting up missions and procedures and rules. I laid out what I wanted, and like Sue, somehow or other, I have it because I get icons, and these icons want to help me. One of my problems is that I send an invitation out every month to remind the 12 people on the library committee that we have a meeting. I set up that invitation so I know exactly the time, exactly the place, exactly who should be there. And AI tries to help me, and I don't want the help. So
Sure.
how
do
I turn it off? And the question I asked a UCSB professor of communications, a lady, you probably work with her, she said, you can go to Google and possibly turn it off, but she said, be aware, you may not be able to. Do you have any answer? How do you turn it off?
How do you turn it off? I have to tell you that I use a lot of different programs. I do video editing. I do all sorts of things. And almost every single time I sit down to do something, I go to Google and I get frustrated with some part of the program. I go to Google and ask it how to do it, how to solve that issue. And it gives you a list of things to walk through. I think the biggest question for you is understanding what software you're dealing with that is causing that problem, and then say, how do I turn off ChatGPT or whatever it is? I'd be happy to look at it with you, but that's there are ways to turn it off, of course. I mean, short of just throwing it out off your computer, you could do that too.
And then it'll say, "I'm sorry, Chris, I cannot do that."
Okay, that's right. And I've emptied your savings account, Chris. Thank you very much.
Can I interject with a question?
Of course.
On the kind of the list of risks, something that I've been reading a bit about is how it's changing human cognition to rely on it. Kind of like we now all use calculators, and how that has changed, how that's changed like our mathematical fluency.
Yep.
And it's just a trade-off that we accept. Like, I won't be as good as at numbers because I just want to use the calculator.
Yep.
It happens when we use it for writing and thinking.
Yep.
So just a comment. Yeah.
There's a book, Alan, called The Skill Code, written by a UCSB professor. He's actually going to be in a panel I'm helping to organize in November for students, and he gives an example of the training of surgeons and how it was literally like a craft. You would literally, surgeons are trained at the elbow of their mentor, watching them go through a procedure, and then they step in and do it themselves. And AI is changing the way that these surgeons, the master surgeons, are able to work to the point where they feel less need to incorporate, or less feelings like they need to bring in these younger doctors to train. And it is having a significant impact. And he talks about a young woman who was in medical school, and what she went through to get that kind of mentoring and tutoring, because the professors were less open to doing it, because they could all just do it themselves now much more efficiently. So your question is right on the money, and that hits squarely at home with the way lawyers are trained in law firms as well. Learning, young associates learning at the elbow of more experienced partners, and will experienced partners be able to do more with less interaction with associates? That's right in the wheelhouse of this question.
I think of it as not necessarily a good or bad. It's just a trade-off that you have to accept.
Society is going to have to decide how we want to mentor and train in an endless amount of professions, when it becomes easier to do the work. We got over here too, Bill too.
Okay, I'm looking at your slide here, and
Oh. Sure. The other one, the other one is charging, and then it just died. After we're done here, I'll chat with David real quick.
okay, so Jim tells me this is working now.
Okay.
Your third item here in this slide is what's been bothering me, and I think bothering a lot of us. We're all thinking about 2001. And, we assume that all this intelligence is going to help us in real life and make humanity have a wonderful time. Why are we feeling safe assuming that? Because you also said this stuff could pick up something that seemed like a threat to itself.
Yep.
And generate
Sure.
falsehoods to make itself safe.
Yep.
Why do we think that it's going to give us a better life, or want to? Why might it not just say there's too many human beings in the world, we don't need them anymore?
Skynet. That's a great question. And here's what I have to say. I mean, I look at AI from both sides. I listen to the optimists, and I also listen to guys like Andy Hinton or Jeffrey Hinton. And if you really want to get a scary picture, I encourage you, Georgia, don't crawl under the chair. If you really want to get a round picture, just go to the YouTube and listen to some of his recent presentations. His presentation when he won the Nobel Prize was cautionary, and he's been doing interviews now since he's left Google that are very concerned about exactly what you say, the ability of machines to think for themselves and modify themselves without our control. And I didn't mention it earlier, but if you sit down with an AI expert, I'm not a programmer, I'm a lawyer, I'm just interested in this area, they will tell you that they do not fully understand how all the decisions get made in artificial intelligence, that there are whole teams within these chat and ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Google that try to analyze what the machines are thinking, and they are not always successful. So that's just the reality of it. Your question is very, very well thought. Bill?
You alluded to the fact that we're now used to our doctors sitting at a computer, entering data into a computer.
Oh, yeah.
How much is it utilized in the district courts and the court system of California at this point? Are there, the judges have computers in front of them? Do they access them during the proceedings?
Mm-hmm. Great question. I posed that question to a judge here in Santa Barbara, and he referred me to the court administrator who did not get back to me in a timely manner. But the judge also said, he said, here's something we're looking at right now, Tom, and he sent me a brochure for an artificial intelligence seminar specifically for judges. So that I can't, my research didn't allow me quite to answer the question which I anticipated. but it's slowly working toward it and slowly trying to see how much they want to incorporate AI into their decision making. Judge Ocha, he's working on it, and I will report back to you when I talk to the administrator as well. I think that's a great question, Bill. Thank you. Thomas.
Well, let me just be the skunk at the garden party, a role I like to play. Not,
Fire away, sir.
not to disagree with anything that you've said, but when we all went to law school, the first week of law school, one of the things that we learned was that there's not an answer in the books if you look hard enough for it.
Yes.
There's information that then you can use to formulate an argument, or a judge can use to formulate a decision.
Yes.
So I always think those judges who try to tell you that they just call balls and strikes, that's bullshit. It's just not possible. There's not an answer someplace to be divine. That's why we talk about justice tempered by mercy.
Mhm.
So I think there'll be a role for human beings, as you say, for judges and for juries.
I agree. Oh, I hope I didn't come across as saying no, but Thomas makes a great point, and I'll say it a different way. What you realize in law school is not the cases that get in front of judges are not the open and shut cases, the ones where the law is clear or the facts are clear. The cases that get in front of judges are where there's a question in the law, the application of the law, differences between circuits, lack of clarity in the facts. And it's exactly right. There is no, it is the judgment of the judge, the court, the judge, the jury, to define those facts and decide what the law is, and that's exactly true. And would we trust one super intelligent AGI person to make that decision? Would we trust one artificially super intelligent person with the equivalent of a billion Oliver Wendell Holmes to make that decision? I submit to that. I'm not prepared to think that we will, but because we want to have the human element in it. The other lawyer, I was hoping Glenn would be here too to quiz me.
There's always going to be a case of first impression.
Of course.
There's always going to be a jury who believes or disbelieves testimony
Yep.
in court.
Yep.
So to answer a question about will juries be phased out, probably never.
I would hope that as a society we would elect not to do that. But again, that is a fascinating question that's coming down the road. Innocent, right, Mary? Yes, ma'am.
Just a comment. You're doing a very good job of trying to convince us that the term judge will retain relevancy.
I think it will. I think it will. I bet, it's survived all the technology that's come up so far. I suspect it will as well, but we'll see. Did you have another one over here?
Just, are there any more comments, questions?
A lot of great questions. Thank you.
If not, I think we need to give it up. Big time for Tom.
Thank you.
And then I know we can see this on our website, right?
Yep.
Because I think our membership who were not able to make it will be very interested in this. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I'm still scared, but good job. All right. Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming.